Hello, everybody. My name is Fearless Cummings, and to my left is
Matt.
Matt. There it is. We are a different view, two philosophers talking about philosophy and all things pertaining to. Today is our very first episode, or whatever, so we're excited to get the kinks out. Today we're going to be talking about Socrates and his philosophies compared to King Solomon, which I think everybody knows who he is. You want to get us started off?
Sure. So these guys have, we're just looking at that. We're comparing Socrates' philosophy to Solomon's love of wisdom, which are essentially the same thing. So these two guys have about a 500-year difference between them. Solomon comes in the neighborhood of 900 BC, Socrates in the neighborhood of 400 BC. Socrates gets his start, he would say, at the Oracle of Delphi, or at the Oracle of Apollo at Delphi, where he's, told he's the wisest man in the world, and he's going to have to go figure that out, right? And Solomon.
Yeah, so what I found with Solomon kind of got his start a little earlier because of a pact that apparently God had with his father, King David. And David and God apparently chose Solomon to take over after David's demise or whatever. So, and they had that planned. It wasn't before Solomon was born, but it was sometime after he was. But I kind of found it a little weird because he had 19 kids and David came in 10th. And usually with something like this, it would usually be your first male son that becomes, heir apparent. But in this case, it was not. And then I had to go figure out, okay, well, who is this? The King David's first son, which his name is Amnon. Is Amnon? Yeah, Amnon. And but apparently he'd already gotten into a whole bunch of trouble. So so that didn't work out for him. But then I was kind of thinking, like, you still skipped over 9 other people for this particular guy. So so apparently God comes to Solomon while he's dreaming and asks him, what is it that you want? And he simply says, I want wisdom. I want discernment to understand good and evil, to be able to rule over my people and be some type of a proper example for them. And God found favor in that, loved it, and then kind of went from there. So
that wisdom for Solomon, I guess we can see like right away a difference, right? So for Solomon, that wisdom is to rule. For Socrates, he's not interested in ruling or even being wise, right?
no,
So
not at all.
what that amounts to historically for Solomon is a transition of that nation from something warlike and agrarian and into something even somewhat industrial and strongly economic.
Right.
So you have the building of the temple, which which was just a huge deal for that religion.
Okay.
It even came to the point of creating a working class, a proletariat that was actually discontent with all the buildings and everything that
Right.
the king gets to enjoy all his harem and his and the god gets to enjoy his great temple, but we did all that work.
Right.
So for Solomon, this is wildly different from Socrates. Socrates is very much the opposite in this way. Socrates wants to dedicate himself to this task of finding the wisdom. Right. Who is wise? Let me find them. Let me talk to them. Let me see what they know. And he refuses. He refuses economic gain for what he does. He refuses to take part in the politics of his day.
Right.
Which is in the Athenian democracy. Of course, he does talk about the politics, so in that way he does take part, but he won't be partisan, you might say. So
which is ironic because that's how he died. You know what I mean? I mean, not necessarily taking part, but running his mouth.
oh yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So ironically, although he may not have necessarily wanted to take part in it, you're still in it. And not only that, but we're gonna go ahead and send you off with a nice little drink over by yourself, type stuff. Whatever. So
Yeah.
I've always found that a bit like ironic that as much as he tried to stay away from it, he was always drugged back into it.
yeah,
You know?
it's true.
I'm not in this. I'm not in this. And then at the end, it's like, I guess I was in it the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of like that show, The Witcher. Like his whole thing is staying out of all of the politics.
Okay.
Is just endlessly dragged back in. Show, book,
I've never
video
seen
game
it.
series. Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah,
one with Henry Cavill?
I think so. Yeah, but still, so
I played the video game a little bit.
yeah. That's the main thing.
What is it? Is it good?
I don't know. Yeah, it's good. But
Alright.
that you talk about his death. These guys, he was tried for basically disrespecting the gods. It's sort of impiety, and you're corrupting the youth. You're teaching them to, follow wrong arguments and disrespect the gods themselves and all this, right? So here's a really interesting contrast, because Solomon genuinely does, to some degree, turn against his God. He's kind of got what you might call a bad streak in Old Testament history.
Yeah. Oh man.
Which I think,
dude.
yeah. Which I mean, to the credit of the writers, like this religion does not hide the faults of its heroes,
No,
right?
no.
It shows them.
Yeah, it puts them out there.
But so Solomon, he's building this economic power.
Yep.
And he is wise. He is given wisdom from his God to do this, right? And part of that process is the international trade, and part of that process is the international marriage. And so he's got, the Bible says 700 wives. Other historical sources take it down to as low as 60, but still, either way, a lot, right?
Yep.
So he's got all these wives from foreign nations who have foreign gods, and he's accommodating them and building and letting altars to their gods be built, and letting this worship of foreign gods happen, which in a monotheistic world is not good. They don't like that, right?
No, no.
So you can see how this is, some sort of impiety, some sort of real impiety on Solomon's part. Yeah. And I think it's easy to look back at some historical events and say, oh yeah, that's just a blip. That's just an exception to the rule, or that's some kind of outlier.
But kind of like King Solomon with the baby thing. Whatever.
Well, right. That's
it's
but
that's the only argument. But go ahead.
No, it's all good. But I think what the real question there is, like, could this economic development of his country, which he was given wisdom by God to do, could that have happened without all the influence of these foreign gods? It seems like to me his distance from that pure piety was the thing that sustained his ability to execute, right? Whereas Socrates doesn't maintain this distance, and it makes everybody mad, and he's far more pious than any of the people trying him, than Miletus, who brings the charges against him. Right? So he's far more pious, and so that actually upsets them even more and undermines them in that way at the end. So I think it's funny, this it's sort of like an inquisition that doesn't look so badly on the sinners as it does on the zealous, because the zealous are the ones that get a little bit too close to the real thing and threaten to undermine the whole, so that's.
But isn't that really with almost everything though? Because and again, we're kind of, I guess, apropos, but if you look at the story of Jesus in the Newer Testament, I mean, he was considered a zealot as well. So based on how he felt about the old laws and what he was trying to do to bring in something brand new, but that's how he was considered at that particular point too. So I kind of find it. I think that it's kind of right on point that in the Old Testament, it's like you're dealing with all these prophets and zealots that actually come in and change up everything, but then in the Newer Testament, you're still dealing with the same type of individuals who come in and change everything, and and even in the Quran, talks about with several of the prophets in there, as well as Prophet Muhammad as well, the same exact thing. So somebody who comes in, seen as a zealot, but goes on to create something that was truly amazing. So it's almost like something that kind of just popped into my head. I wonder if the Antichrist would actually be a zealot.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're looking for the opposite of, then no. Technically, the Antichrist wouldn't be a zealot. It would actually be an actual believer.
Yeah, because it's always the two
Because it's always-
intense believers that come
Right,
too close to.
it's that juxtaposition of that. But if you think about it, isn't that what Socrates talked about in dialectic? What was the word that he used? What word did he
Dialectical?
use? Dialectical methods or whatever, of taking those juxtaposition of these two entirely different things and then kind of bringing that thing out of it to understand that what are we arguing about?
Right.
What are we talking about? What is your definition of all these different things? But it just kind of popped into my head or whatever as you said. I'm like, dude, that's kind of crazy because that's how everything is. I mean, when we're looking at our so-called prophets, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Antichrist would technically be the opposite of him. It would be a believer.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
Ooh.
I'm not a prophet. I don't know.
Me neither. I'm just saying, but again, though, as philosophers, our job is to go where the questions are.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean,
doubt.
that's what we do. So, but the one thing that I did want to touch on was I think that the objective of Socrates and the objective of King Solomon are, again, those two totally different concepts, because Socrates' objective is to get you to think. And if you think about why he died, that was why. Because he questioned everything, and he didn't himself question everything, but he tried to get other people to question everything as well. Mm-hmm. And when you start questioning things, that means that you have to critically think.
Yeah.
But now with Solomon, on the other hand, Solomon wasn't telling you to do a lot of thinking.
No, he's dropping it in
He
your
was
lap.
telling you that, and that's the didactic part of it, is to educate, is to inform you. But it's not for you to make the decision. Your job is to live by God's rules, live your life, stop worrying about the materialistic possessions that you may or may not ever get, or whatever. Live your life, eat fine foods, live by God's laws, and then you die.
Yeah.
And then that was it.
Yeah, and that's methodologically, it's also just so different. That's,
Like massively.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's kind of like one tells you to think, the other one tells you to obey. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, and I think that at that point it literally becomes a personal issue at that point, because one person can tell you to go do something and you're like, nah, I think I'm good on that. But then somebody else tells you to go, yeah, how about you think, or let's rethink this. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, maybe we could do that. But what happens if you don't like to think?
Yeah.
What happens if you want somebody to tell you how to live your life? Yeah. And then at that point, it's like, you know what, I'm gonna just ride with King Solomon because he's wise, he knows.
Yeah.
Why would I listen to Socrates, who gets me to question everything?
Right. Well, okay, but Socrates is also following a mandate, isn't he, from this oracle?
No.
It's not.
I mean, but is he though? Is he really following that? I guess that that perceived mandate, or is, remember when, I forgot who it was, and I'm sure you'll remember. Somebody went to the oracle and asked who was the smartest man here, like in our region. And without even thinking, she said it was Socrates. And then do you remember what happened after they went and told him, hey, this is what the oracle said about you? And then he's like, well, I don't think so. And then he goes around asking everybody, what's the meaning of life? And everybody has their own opinions of these, whether it was personal opinion, public opinion, but there was no universal truths. There was no objectionable truth. And you say, you know what? Maybe I am the smartest guy.
Yeah, well, he says that at his trial, right? That is an apology. It's not an apology in the way we think of it. It's called the apology, but it's his defense in his trial. But yeah, he says that I don't have this wisdom. Maybe the oracle just said that I had that because I recognize that I don't have it. Maybe that's the wisest we can hope to be, right? And maybe the oracle really means that human wisdom is just not worth that much. And so, you know, because this is what he does. He goes out looking for who's the wise person, and he asks them things. He wants to know what they know, and he finds out time and again that, oh, this person just doesn't know as much as they thought they did. They're talking to me about justice. I asked them about justice, and it comes to be a contradiction at the end. And this is what he finds over and over, and that's his method. Actually, it's the elenchus, but that he's questioning until we find the contradiction. Right. And then, and that question usually starts with what is that, right? What is the love? What is the justice? What is truth? You know, or you know, meaning. And so that approach to humility that he has, Solomon also has a certain humility in knowing that his wisdom does not come from him, at least, right? I think Socrates' humility is probably more developed, or at least more expanded upon in the text, for sure.
Okay.
So, because he's looking, he's been told that he's the wisest person alive, but he's serious when he says, no, I really don't know anything. I really am not that wise. All you guys suppose is that I'm so wise because you suppose that I have this wisdom that I just found out that you don't have. Which is kind of a funny way that these qualities bounce back and forth between people. You know, when something's going on with me, I project it onto you somehow. Just like these guys at the trial, they were nowhere near as pious as Socrates was. You know, Miletus was. So Miletus wasn't as pious, nowhere close. So there he goes accusing Socrates of impiety, but it's actually for his intense piety that he's really there.
So let me ask you, do you think that, and again, I mean, I'm trying to get into the mind of another man, right? But I think that we have enough information about Socrates and his method of questioning that we can maybe come up with a general conclusion for him for the most part. Do you think that the reason why he was the way that he was, or that he agreed, if you will, with the oracle when he said that maybe he was the wisest person, because he understood that even when he was talking to other people about, what do you think that the object of life is? What do you think the meaning of life is? And this, that, and the other. And when people would give him answers, these are answers that they believe. Not necessarily that they have an idea about, but that they fully believe. Well, I think that, like King Solomon says, in writing in Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, is a practical and moral, focusing on living a righteous life, understanding human behavior and recognizing the human limits of the human endeavors, right? And all the while make sure that your objective is to listen to God, keep your mouth shut, eat fine foods, and then you're off. But with Socrates, he's like, nah,
Yeah.
like I'm good on that. How do we know that there's a God? You said that God came to you in a dream. God talked to you any more than that?
I said that?
No, I'm saying that, I mean, if Socrates is talking to
yeah.
King Solomon, I mean, that's what you would ask him. You know, it's like, I mean, how do you...
Maybe, but there's
how
also
do we know
a
that?
limit to Socrates' questioning, right? Because he has his
that's
own
so.
he has his own what he calls I think his daemon or whatever, but his own
Yeah.
internal his own spirit
Yep. And he
companion,
did, he
you know,
did talk about that.
that tells him.
He does talk about
Yeah,
that.
when he goes to do something and his spirit companion gives him a no, he doesn't do it, right? It says so there's I think there's a limit to Socrates' question as well. So I don't want to contrast it too hard there, because I think that there's a point at which Socrates is still obeying something that is ultimately unquestioned. The value of wisdom, or the value of questioning, even if you brought it down to the value of questioning, he's still obeying that. That value is still unquestioned.
Right.
So
And he does actually state on a couple different occasions that about the soul being a little bit more than just an idea.
True, but
in general.
I will point out though that some of that may be Plato inserting his own beliefs there, Pythagorean
I
beliefs.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, you can't talk about you can't talk about Socrates without talking about Plato, being that Socrates never wrote anything down.
Right.
Plato wrote everything down, and then you also have to remember that Plato also took the conversations that Socrates had with other people into what's the word I'm looking for?
To account.
Into account as well. So there are some conversations that a person may have said, "Oh yeah, I talked to Socrates, and this was our dialogue. This was our conversation." Now, if you asked Socrates, Socrates would have been like, "I don't even remember that dude.
Yeah.
I don't remember talking to him at all."
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you on that.
They talk to people every day.
At what point, and again, like we had talked about before, Socrates was also one of those dudes in his region that nobody liked him.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
I don't want to say nobody. Out of 100 people, 80% of them didn't like him.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because he wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
He was always walking around asking questions constantly, like he was wearing a wire, just snitching on people. He wasn't, but he was extremely curious about the human condition and the human mind.
Yeah.
Where do you get this from? The who, what, where, why, when, how? That all comes from, I don't want to say originally, but we give him the credit for the Socratic method of questioning that lawyers still use to this day. Now,
Two different purposes though, right?
Go
Because
ahead.
lawyers are persuading, just like the sophists of the day.
Yep.
They're persuading.
Yep.
Right? No, lawyers do other things too, but in court they're persuading, right?
one way or the other.
A philosopher, to philosophize is not to have stake in what the truth turns out to be, but just to seek the truth, right?
That's it.
So it's not to persuade you of one thing or the other. It's to let's look for it. Let's try to find it, right? And so I think that in itself, that already complicates the comparison between the two guys, right? Because you're right. Solomon does not do that. He drops the truths in your lap, and there you are. And Socrates will drag you through this very irritating question,
Yes.
right? And so there's, for Socrates, a quote from Phaedo, there's no greater evil one can suffer than to hate reasonable discourse. I think Solomon, I think any monotheist for that matter would say, no, there's probably some greater evil that one can suffer, and it's, to be alienated from their God or something like that, right? So, but the fear of the Lord, for Solomon, the fear of the Lord is the foundation
Yeah,
of
for
knowledge.
sure. Yeah.
And that is not the case for Socrates. For
No.
Socrates, wisdom is the objective of reasonable dialectic, reasonable discussion. And so I don't know. The comparison between the two guys is fundamentally complicated by that.
Yeah.
I don't want to take that difference too far because I know at some point Socrates is still obeying something in an unquestioning way.
Yep.
At some point, right? Dig down far enough, you find it. But at the same time, Solomon is just sort of dropping these things in your lap and saying, hey, deal with it, right?
Yeah, no, that's literally what it is. But we only have a minute and
Yeah.
30 left. Look at that, man. It already went by so quick. So where we at? So I guess we're right there in the middle. So next topic is actually going to be a fun one. I was just telling Matt about what we're going to be talking about, and he was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's going to be fun. Don't worry about it." I hope that it offends some of you. I mean,
Yeah, we'll see.
either way, man, we're going to ask some questions. If you guys want to contact us, I think we'll put something, we're going to have something in the credits where you can shoot us some questions. We'd love to know what your thoughts are on our topic, whether you agree or disagree. We love an honest discord. So until next time, we will see you in a week or two.
See you then.
See you later.